Great. So I'm glad that you read Productivity in the Workplace. We're now going to be looking at some productivity factors. Now, there are certain things that determine the level of output that you can create. And so we're going to be looking at two sets. So one is qualitative and the other one is quantitative. So the one really looks at the qualities that surround the production process. The other one looks at the measurables that we can see within the production process. And we can mess around with both of them, the qualitative and the quantitative, and see how they interact with each other. Are they correlated? Do they affect each other? Can they knock from one to the other? And so we need to be aware of the operation that we have and what surrounds it. And so let's take a look at some of those factors that I'm talking about. So let's go to our workbook, and straight after productivity in the workplace, there's something called productivity factors. And so you've got two kinds of productivity factors, as I said, qualitative and quantitative. Now let's take a look at the qualitative. Okay, actually I'm going to take you to the PowerPoint because I have listed that. There we go. All right, so let me move myself out the way and then we can move. All right. So these are the things that it's harder to express in units, but it is something that often is very fixed. And so we need to be aware of it and be able to try and see how we can change it in order to increase productivity. So one thing is location. So if you have a head office that is based in Woodstock, and then all your operations are in Montague Gardens, and then all your customers are in Johannesburg, well, your location is going to create a little bit of a problem. So you need to constantly look at the way that things flow within your organization, and the way that it flows on different lines if you're in manufacturing, the way that it moves in manufacturing value chains, and you need to make sure that the location is sorted out. Then you've got to look at technological. So we are in Africa, and obviously our internet is a little bit slower than what it is in Europe and the United States and in Asia. And so technologically, we're a little bit behind in terms of that. But how can we adapt our technology to make it work for us? And so we've got this wonderful resource, but we need to make sure that it taps within our organization and creates an increase in production. If there is one day where we have load shedding or we have an outage on any of our internet, well, you can see the productivity crash. So how do we deal with that? Then we've got psychological. Okay, so if we have been through a lot of retrenchments, a lot of restructuring, I mean, we're just going to come out of lockdown, people are psychologically a lot more fragile. And so it's difficult to increase production or to change methods when people are psychologically a little bit damaged. And so how is the psychology of your business? What are the attitudes like? What are the way things are? Do they see things as only problems or do they always look for solutions? Psychology, it plays a major factor in being able to increase productivity. Then you've got things like external influences. So how good are our competitors? If our competitors hold the monopoly, it really starts to hurt us. If we work well with our competitors, if we've got really good suppliers, then we're going to start to increase our productivity. So often things are just external, but we need to make sure that the external factors can be controlled so that we might be able to use that to increase productivity. We also need to look at things like company structure. So is the company very bureaucratic? Is it very autocratic? Do we need to go through a lot of decision makers in order to get something passed? If we do that, it takes time to adapt. It takes time to become flexible in terms of new production styles. And so we look at the company structure, look at the company culture. If it's innovative, it's creative, if it's moving forward, we start to see a lot more productivity happening quicker. If it is very much that's not the way we do things, well, then it's going to make things harder to adapt and productivity is going to suffer. Then we look at economic and political legal environments. So all of those play a role. Sometimes we can try and mitigate the economic risks. Sometimes we just have to play by the rules and see how the economy helps us or hinders us in terms of increasing productivity. Political, legal, things like minimum wage, in terms of, if we are moving towards higher taxation, might mean that you want to take your head office to a tax haven. And so all of that will change the way that we are able to dictate productivity. And then the effectiveness of management in recruiting, training, communicating with, and performance motivating employees on the basis of pay and other incentives. So a lot comes down to how we are able to motivate, how we are able to recruit, how we are able to train. All of those things play a major role in motivating the workforce to be able to achieve the targets and to push themselves beyond their psychological limits. So how are management able to do that? And that's part of your role, is to try and look at ways that we can motivate the workforce and be able to increase productivity, but often in subtle ways, through connecting, through building relationships, through building trust, as well as those hard things like recruiting, training, and communicating. So how are you guys doing in terms of those? So those are qualitative factors. We can't always measure them, but we can try and adapt them and adjust them to help us to increase productivity. These are the things that help us to be able to see how productivity is done and also where we can move. If we change location, if we change technology, if we change attitudes, we'll start to see things change. And this is where we see the change. In money, so in profits, if profits are increasing, we know that productivity is increasing. In time, if things are moving faster, we know that productivity is increasing. In terms of waste, the lower the waste, the more that people are starting to adjust their behaviors to save the company time and money. Number of goods produced. So again, you know what a good shift looks like. You know what a bad shift looks like. You can see it through the number of goods produced or the number of services delivered. So those are the quantitative factors that we need to constantly be looking at in order to work out, okay, are we achieving what we are supposed to achieve? So use both of them to try and work out if you're on the right track. So let's go to our portfolio of evidence where we're going to do some analysis. All right, so we go to our portfolio of evidence. Okay, now we're going to be going to page number 52. Page 52 in productivity analysis. All right, so in order to become work of best practice or world class, we're going to have to adjust some of those qualitative and some of those quantitative valuations. So on your left-hand side, I want you to tell me what are the things that you deal with in your business. So what's single factors? So is it technology? Is it location? Is it attitudes? Is it company culture? Is it company structure? So you're going to put down these single factors on the left-hand side. Qualitative or quantitative? How do you measure it? Is it qualitative or is it quantitative? Then tell me, is it labor, capital, or material related? What is the main cause for these kinds of things to not work? Okay, so if we're talking about, let's say our single factors is untrained or unskilled labor. Okay, is that a qualitative? Yes, it's qualitative. Is it labor? Yes, it's labor. What is the main cause? Well, we don't have the budget to be able to bring in skilled labor. Okay, what is the main effect? Well, it's poor quality, poor productivity. And then the last one is, now we're going to rank them. So what are the biggest stumbling blocks to productivity within your organization? So you're going to list the single factors. Tell me, is it quantitative or qualitative? Is it labor, capital, material related? What is the main cause? So what is the main reason for it becoming a stumbling block to productivity? What is the main effect? So what effect does it have? And then you tell me what ranking you give to it. Is it a big problem? Is it a small problem? So you rank it in terms of biggest being 1, smallest being whatever. So let's say there are 6 factors. So go 1 through 6. Okay, I'm happy if you give me 5. All right, so once you've done that, you are going to choose one of those 3 factors. Okay, so let's say it is unskilled labor. So what factor have you chosen to target? Unskilled labor. How will you gather your data for this factor? I'm going to do a skills audit or a skills matrix on the new recruits coming into our business. What tools or method will you use to gather the data? I'm going to do a survey, or I'm going to ask the supervisors, or I'm going to do interviews. You tell me how you're going to gather the data. over what time intervals. Will you do it monthly? Will you do it annually? So how are you going to gather your data on the skills matrix or the skills audit of your new recruits? Okay, so once you've done all of that, you're going to gather the evidence of your investigation. Okay, so copies of surveys, reports, meeting minutes, all these kinds of things, because you're obviously going to try and increase productivity in some way. So you're going to tell me how you engaged with it, what you did, emails that you wrote, diary notes, surveys, interview notes, anything that can substantiate what you've done in order to drill down into that productivity factor. Okay. We're going to go a little bit later into problem solving. So you're going to take that data and that you've gathered, and then we're going to drill it down through problem solving. But that's going to be in the next section. Okay, so just focus on that for now, and then we'll go to the next section.